One of our greatest and brightest presidents, I would think, it probably universally accepted, is Thomas Jefferson. Incredible man. And he was the first American ever to purchase any soil in Montana. Specifically, what we know today is to be the Big Sky Ski Resort just south of Bozeman. And this will amaze you. In today's money, he paid $2,500 for the entirety of what is now that resort. And because he was such a bright guy, he also surrounded it with a modest buffer known as the Louisiana Purchase. He had a very good eye for a good deal, and it was good that he did what he did. Louisiana Purchase, by the way, does not include the side of the mountains, so we were still owned by other folks at that time. Scholar, inventor, philosopher, educator, servant of the people, author of the Declaration of Independence. On his gravestone, he directed that it be written that not only did he author the Declaration of Independence, but that he founded the University of Virginia, and that also he was the author of the Statute of Virginia of Religious Freedom. And then somewhere way down on the list, he considered being President of the United States of America. With respect to his understanding of religion, he had a very interesting take on Christianity. You don't get very far in seminary without coming across the Jefferson Bible. Basically, what he did was he took a very sharp knife, literally, to the pages of the Gospels, extracted only the words of Jesus that revolved around his teaching, and then he tossed the remainder, including anything to do with the miracles or dealing with the resurrection. Turns out that he had very little room for clergy and their peddling of what he thought were great superstitions, notions, unbelievable stories, of which the account that we found in this morning's Gospel according to Luke was included. After his resurrection, Jesus, standing among the disciples, asking for fish, was one of those accounts edited out and left to fall on the cutting floor. For Jefferson, the story that we heard today and the companion stories were nothing but nonsense that detracted from what Jesus was really about. Well, he wasn't alone in thinking that then. And as well today, there are many who believe exactly the same as Jefferson. Miracles and post-resurrection stories that we've been hearing all these days of Easter, and will continue to hear for another 4 weeks, were just plain silly. And such a thought is profoundly different, of course, from those who find resurrection stories difficult to believe. Sometimes it must just be said that belief in these appearances and the miraculous is a gift given some, but not necessarily given all. And quite frankly, we are never here to judge people who have difficulty believing, ever. If the resurrection appearances of Jesus stump you, you are not alone amongst the faithful. As I was thinking about this, I believe I have stood on the ground in which every single miracle and resurrection story involving Jesus took place, with the exception of his appearance to the disciples on the road to Emmaus. And the only reason I didn't stand there is no one knows where that is. And you can have your mind absolutely torn in directions when you're standing there and someone is describing, here's the multiplication of the fish and the loaves. Here's the turning of wine into water, and or water into wine. Every time you are in one of those places, you find some of these just seem to be more believable than others. So it's difficult. It can be very difficult to understand, to appreciate, and accept these stories. So that's one whole thing. What we, however, can do as members of the faith is to challenge the belief that's very popular that Jesus was just this dear and wise man who taught some wonderful and pleasant things. When, at the expense of shredding the miraculous, we turn our Lord into this kindly old professor of philosophy or ethics, we really do him a disservice. C.S. Lewis, a truly remarkable and popular novelist and theologian, had much to say about this very thing. In his book, Mere Christianity, which has been a standard for people for years and years, he wrote the following: I am trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't respect his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on a level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he'd be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about how his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. C.S. Lewis did not mince words, did he? Here is an undisputable fact about the life of Jesus. What he said and what he did got him killed. I don't know who proclaimed it first, but I've remembered it forever. It was a point well made that he died because of his table manners. His disciples and he, through them, gathered food on the wrong day. With Jesus, they ate it with the wrong people. And then he used it in terms of bread and wine to say, quite scandalously, that through our gathering in his name and blessing and breaking the bread and sharing a cup, he would be with us, as really he was with them the night before he died. And then following his resurrection, when again, really in the midst of them, he asked for a piece of barbecued fish, blackened red salmon. Because of his unorthodox behavior, he also took 613 laws given to the people of God, and he said, wait a minute, here's a new commandment. Just go love one another. I call you friends. He took people who were thought to be lame, crazy, and dangerous, and he healed them, overturning the notion that they were afflicted with their maladies because they or their parents had sinned. He reached across all sorts of lines of demarcation and enfolded folks who did not belong into his company of friends. He stared down the religious and said their laws and customs on divorce were not of God, but rather they were filled with alienation and division and sin. He looked Pilate in the eye and he says, you think you've got a kingdom? Man, you ought to see what I have. So really, if you just want to kind of dabble in philosophy and ethics and morality, Jesus is not the fellow you want to follow or copy in your behavior and speech. That's not what he's offering. And that, I am guessing, is one of the reasons his showing up as resurrected terrified the disciples, as we heard in the reading this morning. Think about this. After the crucifixion, they were just trying to put their lives together. You can't blame them for that. This man they followed and all that he stood for had just been wiped off the face of the earth. He had been crucified. He had been killed. He had been defeated. Perhaps they were beginning to accept the errors of their ways. Maybe the Pharisees had been right all along. Perhaps now it was time to get back to fishing. And no longer for people has been the line that had hauled them into the band, but harmlessly and normally just for fish. They may have been losers, but at least they were alive, and they could return to some kind of life after these tumultuous 3 years or so of following this fellow. And then Jesus stood before them, terrifying them with the fact that he had been spot on all along. While admittedly it must have been unfathomably joyful to have their friend back, it could not have been lost on them that he had indeed been killed. And after Jesus opened their minds to understand the Scriptures, they knew, whether they liked it or not, that they were back in business as those who would continue to flip the world right on top of its head. It could not be denied. They were witnesses to it. Guilt by association. It's kind of similar to where we find ourselves today, isn't it? We are witnesses of the resurrection. We're witnesses of that not to a syllabus for a class in ethics or morality, or worse, etiquette. This is about the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body. This is about life everlasting. And quite frankly, I can't help but believe today, disconcerting as it may be, terrifying as it may be, foolish as it may be, this good news of resurrected life is just too valuable to edit out and leave as cuttings on the floor. Amen.